All right, so we're watching Brett Steinhauser. Has a couple more turns. He's going to round that final sweeper. Tires squealing up into the offsets. You wiggle the cone. I see a worker going to check it out. Dropping some what looks like magnets as he's flying into the finish with a 69.8. 69.8 for Brett Steinhauser. Leading us off in SCR. Unfortunately, has one cone on that run. So +1 for Brett on that 69.8. He'll be followed up by the number 24 car of Stephen Lee. He's in an 2002 Honda S2000. Takes over the lead from Brett with a 68.2, 68.2. So listening to some radio chatter here. Possible off course on Brett from corner 3. We'll try to keep you informed on how that unfolds as Kurt Bogeman and the number 25 car comes through. 71.1, 71.1 slots himself in second as Brett is tagged with that DNF unofficially. Have Larry McCarthy and Justin Gates on course currently. It looks like a little bit of delay before sending that third car out. Watching Larry come through those final offsets. The first Mazda Miata that we've seen so far in STR, number 71. Time it is a 75.5, 75.5 for Larry McCarthy from Mount Vernon, Ohio. So 75.5, about 4 seconds behind that number 2 spot of Kurt Bogeman. Justin Gates coming up in the number 78 STR car. What does he have for us? Goes right to the top with a 66.9, 66.9 for Justin Gates. So let's do a little bit of statistical maths here. Top A street time is a 65.9. We'll see if STR can top that in raw time as Jared Hicks comes through. 67.5, 67.5, but unfortunately +1 cone for the number 87 STR car driven by Jared Hicks. So again, a 67.5 +1 for car number 87. Josh McDonough coming up next in the MX-5. 67.2 to take the top MX-5 Miata spot, but he still trails Justin Gates, who's holding on to the lead by a quarter of a second. So 67.2 for Josh McDonough in the number 90. Slots him in a second by a .25. There's Noel Leslie coming through the finish, and he takes over the lead on a first 65 time in STR. 65.8, 65.8. Still somewhat of a green course, so I'm expecting times to just continue to improve. But Noel doing a great job getting that first run down. Again, a 65.8, your new leader in STR. But who do we have next? It's Marcus Luttrell, number 92. He's got a 66.8. That'll slot him into the number 2 spot, 9/10 behind Noel Leslie. So top 3 cars right now, S2000, Miata S2000. Pretty good battle here between the 2 cars. I've seen some events where either one or the other has had some sort of advantage, and that's let them pull away from the class. So great to see some balance here as both the S2000 and MX-5 mixing it up top. Tim Byers in the number 94 car, tagging 2 cones on a 68.9, 68.9 plus 2 cones. So that 68.9 would have put him right out of the trophies, right on the verge, but still about half the class left to go, waiting for some second drivers after we get Josh Owens sliding through the finish here. Big tank slapper, but now a DNF for Josh Owens on a 65.7. 65.7, but DNF, so not sure if that was a shortcut out there, but that would have been a great scratch time. Could have contended for the lead, but DNF. Matthew Braun, one of the guys that I was looking for in this class, a little bit of a slide coming through the finish, and new top time in class. Matthew Braun setting pace on a 64.9 STR officially now. or possibly unofficially, officially, faster than A Street. So C prepared action coming up next as Matthew Braun makes his way back into the grid area. It's Matthew Braun at the top spot. Noel Leslie sitting about 9/10 back in second. Marcus Luttrell in third in STR. Continuing on, we've got CP, Greg Ballou, and the number 5 CP Chevy Camaro. A 70.8 plus 1, 70.8 plus 1 for our first contestant in C prepared. All right, next is number 22 in C prepared, Ron Ittner in a Ford Mustang. Heard some radio chatter possibly involving this car off course in corner 2. We'll see what happens. An 84.0, and it is off course, so likely that corner 2 call. 84.0, but unfortunately is off course in corner 2. So the DNF erasing that 84.0. He'll have 2 more runs to come back through, trying to find the course and set a good paced time. As C prepared continuing to make their way through the course. We've got the Ford Thunderbird. Love seeing this car run. John Bradbury from Oak Harbor, Ohio. Timing is a 67.4, 67.4. Current top spot in C prepared with about 4 cars left to go. So Bradbury in that Ford Thunderbird. A 67.4. He'll be followed up by, we've got, looks like Chris Miller and Arnold Beebe out on course, finishing off first drivers in CP. So Chris Miller comes through 76.4, 76.4 for Chris in the 1979 Ford Mustang, the Mustang Turbo. That'll put him about 3.5 seconds behind Greg in the number 2 spot. And just as I say that, Arnold Beebe taking over that number 2 spot on a 70.9, 70.9. So John Bradbury in that Ford Thunderbird hold on to a 3.5 second lead after the first 5 cars through in C prepared. Arnold Beebe in second, 3.5 seconds back, with Greg Blue 1.8 behind him in third. So 3 trophies going to those top 3 guys if they can hold station for the rest of the day. We've got B Street action. These are the non-club racer variant of the S2000s running in B Street. And Vincent, our first contestant there in the number 27 car, 73.4, 73.4 for Ann Vincent, and that yellow S2000 sponsored by Small Fortune Racing. She's on Dunlop tires in class. We've got some Dunlop tires, some BF Goodrich tires, so about split even between the class. BF Goodrich, one of our proud sponsors. It's the official street tire of the SCCA. So if you need passenger car or light truck tires, they will be more than happy to help you out. Jim Zeisler next in B Street, taking over that top spot by 2 seconds over Ann. A 71.4 is the time for him. Jim Zeisler in that MX-5 sponsored by Dave Cutney Tire. He's also on Dunlop tires and running a 71.4. Dave Baker is next in, and we've got the Chevy Corvette. Those C5s running in B Street, 71.3, 71.3. For that, I think those are non-Z06 Corvettes running in B Street. And a new leader here in BS, George Maudlin, and the Pontiac Solstice, a 70.4, 70.4. So top currently. Actually, we still have one more B Street car. We've got Edward Fisher coming up in another Chevy Corvette. He's going to need to beat a 70.4, and that 70.4 just set by George Maudlin. Our most recent finish. Can he do it? Ed Fisher does it. Does it by a good amount there. 3.3 second lead for Edward Fisher in that 2000 Chevy Corvette for a 67.9. That 67.9 by Ed Fisher, giving him a 3.3 second lead over Dave Baker, who sits in second. Jim Zeisler rounding out the trophies. Kart modified action with Tim Ruth coming through the finish. Unfortunately, a DNF on a 61.8. 61.8 for Tim Ruth. So 61 in, I'm not sure if he got lost or just maybe swung wide on a corner. Going to be expecting these guys to get deeper into the sub-60 times, as I saw some full-body cars doing that this morning. Next up, Jason Vahij in the number 13 kart sponsored by JAV Racing Team No Lead. He's in with another DNF on a 61.6. So 2 DNFs in a row for these kart mod guys. Not sure if it's just harder to see where this big sprawling course goes, sitting so low. We'll find out. We've still got a few more first drivers in kart mod. We've got a first timed run. Colin Scheidler in the Renspeed Silver Honda. 59.2 for Colin. 59.2 for Colin Scheidler. Current leader in kart mod, as 2 previous finishers with DNFs. Still have about 4 more karts, and here's George Nelson with another DNF. So 3 DNFs out of 4 for kart modified. Somehow, kart mod just not having a good time finding this course. Again, that's a DNF for George Nelson, and that number is 26 kart. All right, next in is Kevin Vincent. Kevin with our second time to run for kart mod, a 64.5. That'll put him 5 seconds back behind Colin Scheidler, who's been the only kart mod guy who was the first kart mod competitor to find his way through the course clean. Kevin Vincent, our second one to do so, and that puts him in second place. Next up, Clarence Clark, another DNF. So Clarence Clark, a DNF, number 29 kart mod, a 63.1, but unfortunately is off course. Not sure if these guys are just going so fast through some sections that the corner workers can't see them going through the gates or what. But a lot of these guys, DNF on their runs. And here we have our third time to run in kart mod. A 62.8 for Michael Francis. Michael Francis in that Cardiac Racing GP kart. A 62.8 for him. Next up, blazing through the finish is Scott Boydo. Scott, number 68 in kart mod, takes over the lead by 2 seconds over Colin Scheidler on a 57.1. 57.1 for Scott Boydo, our new leader in kart modified. Just have one more co-driver left to go in class. We've got 4 DNFs and only 4 timed runs, so half the class unfortunately not able to find their way. We'll see if that changes with the 2 subsequent runs. As we're back to door slam in action, it's A Street prepared. A little bit of an off course to the finish. Not sure if those are chalked, so we'll see if those count. Matt Butts with a 67.5. 67.5 for Matt Butts in that 2011 Nissan 370Z. He's got a mountain to climb against this Evo that's coming up next. It's going to be Francis Miller first. He's got a 66.2. 66.2 for Francis Miller in that Mitsubishi Evo 8. Francis from Peoria, Arizona, 66.2. New leader in ASP. Next up is going to be Ryan Lutz in the MR2, spinning through that final offset. Got that thing sideways, just not able to reel it back in the back end of that MR2 just wanted a pendulum all the way out there. Gets it right around, comes through a 71.4 plus 2 cone, 71.4 plus 2, and a style points for the spin for number 92 in ASP, Ryan Lutz. Getting over to E prepared. Robert Christmas coming in first with a 64.9 plus 1 cone. 64.9 plus 1 for Robert Christmas. And the number 39 Honda Civic SI, sponsored by Pure Tuning and Casino Motorsports. Next up in EP. Crap. Gordon, I know how to pronounce your name. Gordon Masulowicz. I know Katie's going to come up here and smack me. 64.2 for Gordon in the 88 Honda CRX from Monroe, Ohio. Makowitz. Yeah. I knew that. I'm going to forget in about 20 seconds. Here we have Matt Turo. Number 58, and you prepared a 67.0 for the number 58 car driven by Matt Turo. And that'll slot Matt in a third, just 96 thousandths of a second behind Robert Christmas. Right now, Gordon Makowitz in the lead by 2.6. Pretty comfy lead there. As we're getting into A modified action. So A mod, a 66.8, and that's DNF for Dan Washdahl. 66.8, but DNF for Washdahl. So that time, not characteristic of an A modified car. Not sure what happened for that DNF, but a lot of these mod cars, kart mod and now A mod, not finding the course or just pushing too hard and getting off course. Could be some of those bumps in the back section. Here we've got our new top time. And I'm not sure who that is because we had a bad scan. That's not Simi Rich in that cart because Simi's out on course still. So we're going to reserve calling out, but definitely your leader in A-Mod with a 58.5. Don't have a name there. Maybe I can go back to the class and find out before Simi comes to the finish. So that's probably Dave O'Malley. So Dave O'Malley with that 57 likely, or 58. Next up, I think is Simi Rich with a 67.3 for Simi Rich. And I'm announcing on the fly here because my results a little squirrely. So Simi Rich, a 67.3 to start us off in SSRL. And next is going to be Shelly Monfort, a 64.4. That'll put Shelly up in the lead. So Shelly leading Simi by about 2.8 here. We've got Stephanie Reeve coming up next in that iRacing sponsored C5. And Stephanie Reeve taking over the lead over Shelly with a 63.2, 1.1 second over Shelly. So each car in SSRL just going faster than the last. We'll see what happens. We've got Cheryl Davis coming up next. Cheryl in that number 96 SSRL C6 Corvette. Again, what I'm saying right now is unofficial as my times do not match. 70.0, 70.0 for Cheryl. Just lost my SSRL screen, so not sure where that puts her. And still have a couple more ladies out on course, I think. So that's got to be Donna Marks in the number 98 car, 68.0 for Donna Marks. I hear cheers in the background as all these ladies rooting for each other. Great class to compete in. Looks like Stephanie Reeve in the lead currently with a 63.2. Shelly with that 64.4 in second, and Simi in third. 67.3. I believe Cheryl's in the fourth spot right now. I still have probably Lyric Kramer sitting at the line. Can't quite see the start from here. And there she is, Lyric, making her way out on course in that GT3. So she'll be another one to watch. Lyric, Shelly, and Stephanie. Three very fast ladies. I've seen all three of these ladies, we'll say, go guy fast. I don't want to say boy fast. Oh, Lyric pushing or possibly just some understeer as she goes way deep. Oh, and she does miss that gate as she oversped coming off the slalom after that showcase carousel turn that makes its way back around here. Can likely see that in that live stream. So that was a DNF out there. We'll see what the time is as Lyric now just working to get heat into the tires as she slides the back into that GT3 around. 67.1 with an off-course 67.1, but as a DNF. So DNF for Lyric over in corner 3 with an off-course. She's shaking her head as she makes her way back in. All right, so just listening to some radio chatter on the DNF on Lyric there, so we'll get back to you on that one. Either way, I believe that's going to be a throwaway run for her, as she's got 2 more runs to try to come back. SSLRL after first drivers ended up with Stephanie Reeve in that top spot, Shelly Monfort in second, Simi Rich in third. That'll round out the trophy positions in class, and we're going to get back over to full-bodied actions. All right, so we're going into SSPL action, not to be confused with SSRL action. That may get a little confusing, as those classes, the class designations are pretty close to each other. The SSPL and SSRL almost looking the same, except you can't mistake that big spoiler on that C5 Corvette of Amanda Minen. Amanda coming through, our lone competitor in SSPL, will take that lead with a 69.1 plus 1. 69.1 plus 1 cone for Amanda in that SSPL C5 Corvette. That'll push us over into G Street, ladies. Laura Harbour in that Toyota Celica. Laura making her way back in on those final offsets, coming into view of that live stream camera, brought to you by Carts Live Internet and Video Production Services. A 70.9 is the time for Laura. 70.9 for Laura Harbour. So I'm told we're going to have an onboard view coming from the S2000. All right, so staying corrected, it's an MX-5 that has the onboard camera with Stephen McCarthy coming through in sorry, that's not Stephen McCarthy. That's an STSL car. 70.9, 70.9. Must have missed the scan there. I'm going to cheat and find out that name for that 70.9. That's Lynn Cox in that 1990 Mazda Miata. All right, so Steve McCarthy with a 73.4. 73.4 for Steve McCarthy. As we get a big cone there from our live timing car, John Lee, possibly showing off maybe a little bit too much on the live stream. He's come through with a 67.2, 67.2 for John Lee. Next up is going to be Nick Barbado. He's one of the top guys in this class. Can he catch that 64.9 from Matthew Braun? He slides it a little bit coming through the finish. 5/10 lead for Nick Barbado on the first run here as he comes through the finish on a 63.4. New leader here in STR. It's Nick Barbado on the top spot. Matthew Braun, I almost missed that. That's a 1.5 second lead for Nick Barbado over Matthew Braun. Then Noel Leslie 9/10 behind him for that top 3 spots in STR with a few more drivers left to go. It's going to be Tavis Spencer coming up next, a 67.7 for him, 67.7 for Tavis, but unfortunately a DNF off course for Tavis Spencer in that number 94, 194 STR car. All right, final driver for first runs here in STR. It's Jeff Walker, 65.1, 65.1. That'll bump Noel Leslie back into the 4th spot as he takes over the number 3 position in his Honda S2000 CR, number 198 in STR. A 65.1. He trails Matthew Braun by about a quarter of a second. Next up, some seat prepared action. It's Sean Ittner, 69.3, 69.3 for Sean in that Ford Mustang. Trails John Bradbury by just under 2 seconds there. So John Bradbury holding on to the lead, but his co-driver coming up next, swinging that Ford Thunderbird all over. Time in 67.6, but unfortunately +1, 67.6, but +1 cone. That cone negating what would have been a 2/10 run off of his co-driver John Bradbury. So Ethan Bradbury getting into 3rd due to the cone, 2/10 behind Sean Ittner. Big spin out on course by Greg Vincent as Greg goes hot into the final sweeper up before the slalom. We'll see if he can get that righted before Jack Burns comes up. It looks like we may have a red flag situation coming out on course, and it is so as Jack slows it down, gets it stopped. He's going to have to try to scoot his way up to the finish as Greg Vincent times in a DNF on a 92.1. No help there for Greg with that big spin on the sweeper before that final slalom. Jack Burns coming through, making his way up to the finish. He's going to have to pick up the pace so that we can keep cars running. Mike Eckert following up closely behind him in that B Street Corvette. Looks like we'll be okay as Jack Burns comes through. He'll have a rerun due to that red flag situation. We've got Mike Eckert coming up next in that C5 Corvette. So next up, Mike Eckert, a 77.3, 77.3 for Mike Eckert in that Chevy Corvette. He's sitting about just under 4 seconds behind Ian Vincent for the 5th spot in class. Next up, in kart modified, Tim Vincent, our 3rd driver from Kartmod to drop below that 60-second mark, a 59.8, 59.8 for Tim Vincent. Next up, Aaron Miller. He was the provisional guy to beat going in, and he shows why with a 62.0 for Aaron Miller in that 05 Mitsubishi Evo 8. Class leader by 4 seconds over co-driver Francis Miller, and that Evo taking over the top 2 spots in ASP. E prepared coming through next. It's Carmen Rollins, the number 139 Christmas Mobile. 65.2 for Carmen. All right, who do we have next? It's Peter Smith in A modified, number 185. Little Ginger through that final slalom. Looks like he was taking his time through that course. A 69.0. Not sure if something happened to the car. 69.0 for Peter Smith. And that will leave Dave O'Malley, our top contender, in A modified. Chrissy Weaver up next. Just out of the trophies, a 66.0, 66.0. Actually, I stand corrected. That should be that third trophy spot. So Chrissy Weaver sitting third, about 1.5 behind Shelly Montfort. Stephanie Reeve with that 1.1 second lead over her. And I believe that may round out first runs for heat number 2. All right, so a little bit of downtime. And if you're watching at home, your video, courtesy of Karts KARTS, it's spelled Live Internet and Video Production Services. And we get some onboard action as well as some live action from the finish cam here every once in a while. And I heard somebody say a bad 4-letter word over the radio. I'm not gonna announce it, but if you have anything that you do want to keep dry, make sure it's covered. Alright, so it looks like we're going to get through with our rerun. There's going to be Jack Burns in that Mini Cooper, who was red flagged out on course. And following him, we'll have the number 5 STR car to start off second runs. I'm told that he's got a live video camera from his car. So car number 5, we'll be looking for him. He'll be coming up next. All right, so Jack Burns in what looks like a Miata, because that's definitely not what he's registered under. It says Mini Cooper on my screen, but that's not what I'm seeing out on course right now. Can he get in time before the course is no longer dry? Trying to keep the profanities down to a minimum here in the announce vehicle. So keeping the 4-letter words out of it as Jack Burns has just a couple more offsets. We'll see what he can do with this rerun. He's sliding into the finish, a 69.2 to take over the second spot. 1.2 seconds behind Edward Fisher. So now, unofficially done with first runs as the sweep mobile heads out on course. Quite possibly the classiest sweep car that I've ever seen. It looks like a Volvo 740 maybe? Or is it an older Mazda? Some early 90s, late 80s vintage car. Over in B Street, your top spot there currently after run 1 is done, 67.9 for Ed Fisher. About 1.2 back is Jack Burns, who just finished on his rerun. Dave Baker rounding out the trophies in that third spot. He's 2 seconds behind Jack. Let's see, STR. I want to say it's a good battle here, but Nick Barbado checking out of the class on his first run. A 1.5 second lead there over Matthew Braun, who holds second, and that's where the battle is, with Jeff Walker a quarter of a second behind him for a third. Noel Leslie up in that fourth spot. He trails Jeff by about 7/10, and then Marcus Luttrell another 9/10 back in fifth to round out the trophies. So not quite as tightly packed as we saw last weekend here in STR, and these guys going to be anxious to get back out on course to see if they can change the current standings and possibly just position themselves better for tomorrow. So I hear cars leaving the line now. It's going to be Brett Steinhauser in that 2001 Honda S2000. We are live on board this car watching Brett take to the course. I'm watching a little bit of his in-car video from here in the announce vehicle. It's real interesting. He's making his way through that slalom. Looks like there's still a pretty good amount of stick as that car is nice and tidy through the slalom. Comes around the sweeper, gets up there into second gear as he rounds that 90-degree turn to head back away to the backside sweeper and slalom combination on this Alex Jones designed course. Brett with just a couple more corners to go. Working the steering wheel pretty hard in that car, as I could see from the video. And some corner workers running. Are they checking cones? Oh, Brett with a tank slapper through the finish, and there he goes right around. Not quite able to keep up with the steering on that car as he's through the finish at 74.9, 74.9 for Brett Steinhauser. And he improves over a DNF, but it unfortunately has a spin on it as the weather comes down a little bit harder. I'm still not saying it. Stephen Lee next to finish. He improves, so an improvement here as conditions starting to worsen. 67.7 for Stephen Lee, number 24 in STR. That's a half-second improvement for him. We'll see how long the improvements continue to last. Next up, Kurt Bogeman, number 25. Time is a 70.8. That's an improvement, a quarter-second improvement there. So a half-second improvement for the previous car, then a quarter-second for Kurt. So a couple cars still able to find time. Ground is not completely soaked yet, so there should be some grip left if these cars can find it. Larry McCarthy next up to the finish of 73.9, and that's an improvement there. 1.5 second improvement, so biggest improvement so far in this heat, actually. I can see some sunlight over in the distance if it can only just get to us. Justin Gates next up, 10.5 improvement for the number 78 STR S2000 driven by Justin Gates. 66.8 is the time on the board for him. Slots him up in that fifth and final trophy position here in STR. Jared Hicks going to be next. Needs a good improvement, and he gets it. A 1.2 second improvement for Jared Hicks, but only good enough to get him up into ninth. A half second behind Stephen Lee for eighth as conditions continuing to get worse and worse. Josh McDonough coming up in that 2009 MX-5. He slows down by 2 seconds there, so first slowdown in STR, 69 to 69.2 for Josh McDonough as the ground's starting to develop a bit of a sheen And that's right about when times are going to start to drop. There's Noel Leslie in. He's got a cone on this one, 67.1, 67.1. So no improvement there. About 1.2 seconds slower plus a cone. So Noel Leslie, no help on that run, and looks like the rest of these runs are not looking too bright. Marcus Luttrell next up in the number 92 car. He's slower by 3.1 second slowdown for Marcus. All right, next up, Tim Vyers. There's an improvement, 69.2, but that's mostly an improvement due to dropping a bunch of cones off. So Tim Vyers getting into that 10th spot behind Jared Hicks by about 9/10 of a second. Next up, Josh Owens, number 97 in STR. Improvement over the DNF with a 68.1. So looks like times are couple seconds slower in general. As next up, Matthew Braun, he is about 2.5 seconds off of his quick time, 67.5 for Matthew Braun, as now some of the spray is starting to kick up. It's more or less officially rain here in the 2004 Wilmington Champ Tour. So STR at least running on treaded tires there. These CP cars out on course currently looks like they're still mostly running slicks. So as the conditions get worse, they're just going to get slower and slower. Of course, those slicks not helping their cause at all. As soon as you get up to speed, it pretty much just takes everything away from you. We're going to have Greg Ballou, a DNF in his number 5 car. All right, so it looks like we have some lightning in the distance, and that's cause for us to shut things down. As Rob Ittner DNFs a 101.3, so there's no help for Ron. And with the lightning out on course, we're going to have to pull in some corner workers. As one of the safety conditions is that we are not allowed to run with lightning present. So some lightning over in the distance is going to shut us down for just a bit, as looks like the rain's starting to subside. So looking at some of the radar, just one big cell, which currently is passing over us. so it should be a pretty quick break here. As going back through. They should be in the truck. You want to take the doodle bug over there? My seat heaters are on for some reason. Thanks to whoever did that. Alright, so sorry for the break. It looks like things starting to lighten up. Haven't heard any word yet on how long we're going to have to continue. Don't have quite the same radar forecasting equipment as they may have inside. It basically just means that my smartphone has just crashed. So over in STR, likely to continue on that lead unless a miracle happens and somebody parts the waters just on this course. Nick Barbado with that 1.5 second lead over Matthew Braun, who's sitting just a quarter second ahead of Jeff Walker for second place. Noel Leslie up in that fourth spot, 7/10 back, followed by Justin Gates to round out the trophies there. Who else do we have in this class? We've got some B Street action. Looks like Ed Fisher in that top spot, followed by Jack Burns, 1.2 behind him. Then Dave Baker to round out trophies up in B Street. So those roadster classes just seem to be pretty spread out. Although just first run, it's a tough surface to get used to with the amount of grip that is available. I stand corrected, that used to be available. We'll see if that comes back. Yeah, over in ASP, looks like there was a late cone call on Aaron Miller, as now he's being tagged with a cone. Still has that lead. Only a 2-second lead over co-driver Francis Miller, and those two take the top two spots in ASP after first runs. We'll see what happens if conditions get any better by the third run. With this slight delay here and going into third runs, may have enough time if the sun can come out. So it looks like the lightning has subsided from the reports that I'm getting in. Should be getting ready to go any minute now. Alright, so just looking up some interesting tidbits of information. One of those is the I'm going to say this is all unofficial because I'm not actually looking at any of the lovely Pronto timing system. The Pronto timing system is the official timing system for the SCCA solo national events. But interestingly enough, I've got a PAX list here that shows an STR car at the top of PAX. I'll let you do the math in your heads. Hopefully, if you're not doing Common Core, you'll do it sooner than later. But an interesting mix up there. I've got some STR, STF up in that second spot. Some ESP action, C Street, A Street, ASP, CMod, XP, Kartmod, and EP. I don't believe there is a single duplicate class in the current top 10. Gotta have to wonder if it's going to stay like that with the remaining 4.5 heats left to go. And again, the names have been changed to protect the innocent. So while it looks like there's a 60% chance that it's already raining outside, I heard some talk about storm cells brewing overhead. So may just have to wait a few more moments before getting back. If you're watching at home, you get a lovely a reminder that we are currently paused for a rain delay, or actually for a lightning delay, as lightning potentially a safety hazard, and we are very safe here with the SCCA. Still have about 4.5 heats left to go. Having already run through about 1.5 heats already. I'm gonna get back over to the first heat. Let's see what happened there up in A Street. Mike Jr. Johnson getting that BF Goodrich shod Z06 Corvette to the top spot. Let's see, what's he got there? He's got coned away a 65.6. That's pretty quick there, but settles for a 65.9, which is 1.1 ahead of Jed Peterson, who had some trouble with the course on his second and third runs. Banked on his first run and held on to that second spot, respectable considering those final two runs there. Han Henze from Lebanon, Tennessee, in a Porsche Cayman, sitting third, just 3.5 tenths behind Jed, with Brian Flanagan rounding out the trophies. Tim Kong just one out. I'm getting harassed from back home as I'm quoting Mean Girls. So if you know Jenna Corrales, she unfortunately was stuck at home sick. So if you can send her a nice well wish or message, I'm sure she would appreciate it. Sorry, Brian Connors, your cookies are not here, but maybe if you win, you'll get them at the next event. Let's see, what else do we have from Heat 1? Radio call just in to make sure that corners have your radios on. We could get going any minute now. And C Street running earlier. Mark Andy from Poland, Ohio, in the top spot in his RX-8, getting all the way down to a 66.6. So that's up there actually with those A Street cars. So we are about 2 minutes away from getting going. Corners, if you're in earshot, please start getting back out on course. I see some corner workers already making their way to Station 5. The sooner we can get back to course, the sooner we can start running, the sooner we can call it quits, go to the hotel, and have a party by the pool. Or if you still have runs to go, which I know about 4 heats do. Actually, most of these workers likely in that boat. So it would be totally cool. Awesome. Justin Lau heading out with 2 thumbs up. Let's do this. So sooner we can get going, sooner we can get cars out there. We are on a time crunch. Have to be off site on a hard deadline. So unless we can pick things up, maybe pushing that line, that limit. Alright, as corner workers start filtering out there, and again, if you're in earshot and you're supposed to be working course, please check out to your work assignment. I see Perry over there with his camera nice and bagged. Hey, Perry. Dedicated photographer for AutoXPics.com. Rain or shine or possibly snow. Maybe snow would be some cool pictures, so I'm sure he would be out there for that too. But Perry getting some great shots out on course. Get some with those planes pointed this way, Perry, if you can hear me. It'd be kind of cool if you get a winged car in front of the plane in the same direction. Not that I'm saying which winged car to take pictures of or anything. All right, over in E Street prepared. Had a good battle there, possibly the tightest battle so far today. Jadrice Toussaint holding on to the lead by 85 thousandths of a second over Ryan Finch, who sits in second. 9/10 over Dave Heinrich. Dave Feiner sitting in that 4th and final trophy spot with Sean Alexander just out of the trophies by 89 thou. Here's the gaps from 3rd to 5th. 68 thou, then 89 thou, so roughly 10th and a half separating 3rd through 5th. And then, of course, 1st and 2nd. Less than a 10th between those two. So awesome battle going down there in ESP. Getting over to XP. Not that I have any biases in this class, but Todd Keene holding on to the top spot there by 4.5 tenths on a 59.8. Doing an awesome job in XP. Possibly one of the only cars in that class that has an interior. Dave Hedrick sitting in that number 2 spot. Saw him get a little squirrely on that 3rd run, so might have cost him as he was flying through the first half. We'll see if he can come back tomorrow in that 93 Mazda RX-7. Let's see, Open C mod. Have John Engstrom in the top spot there. 4 tenths behind him, Chris Pruitt. Both of those guys driving that Swift DB1. Ray Thomas rounding out that trophy is in that 3rd and final trophy spot in his Renard. About 4 tenths back from Pruitt with John Carrier right outside of the trophies by 3 tenths. Up in STF, a Ford Focus leading the way with Preston Jordan and Justin Tillis at the command. Preston 1.2 ahead of his co-driver. Those two hogging up the top 2 trophy spots with Joe Austin outside looking in. 1.7 back from Justin Tillis in that number 2 spot. Looks like we had some classic American cars. No, we did not have any classic American cars today. Although I swore I saw some Z06 Vets out there. I think that about rounds out most of the action from first heat. Second heat got underway. Then about Right at the end of first run, some droplets falling on my windscreen. Not sure if someone was just spraying their tires down a little too much, but that led to one thing to another, and rain came down. So thanks a lot, whoever was overspraying your tires. Still a little bit of precipitation as things getting slightly brighter. Hopefully the sun doesn't come out tomorrow and makes its way out here today. Anyone who gets that reference has watched one too many musicals. And we should be getting back underway with, let's see, I think STR ran through most of their drivers. Maybe some B Street action coming up next. I think CP was at the line when all this came down, so a couple CP cars will lead us out, I think. Corner workers are mostly at their stations. Just getting ready to go now. All right, a couple more radio checks going on here as we're getting ready to go. Conditions starting to look a little bit better. A little bit of wind out there should help some of the evaporation. that is baited for the first car to come to the line. Jenna, stop laughing. Okay. As we are getting ready to go any minute now. More radio action as corner workers are out there ready to rock. I can hear some carts warming up in the background. Can't tell if that was thunder or CP starting up. Or maybe they're just started rolling. Looks like we are finally getting rolling with cars at the line. I'm going to get a car through here and walk them through. As if you're looking through the live feed, you can kind of see how the finish is doing. And more C-prepared action. Chris Miller in the maroon Ford Mustang Turbo. I'm working the course as I get database errors on my screen. We're live here. Gingerly making his way. Some splashes that as he comes back through the showcase Chicago box. So Chris out there, likely on slicks, judging by his pace, has splashes that Ford Mustang through the course. Got to be tough to handle all that C-prepared power with limited traction. Pretty good spray through that backside slalom. So quite a bit of standing water still out on course. Just a couple more offsets for Chris before we see if we got a good time to run in here. Hopefully the rain not playing too many games with those lights. And we've got Chris in. He'll improve from a DNF with a 101.6, 101.6 for Chris Miller. I just had to get some bugs worked out with my computer here as we're back to action. George Modlin and Ann Vincent, I think, on course. Except I don't see George. So it looks like that's Ann Vincent. And the number 27, B Street S2000. right, so Ann Vincent and Jim Zeisler were working the course up in B Street. Vincent, time in an 85.5, 85.5. So Ann, 85.5, that'll be no help for her. Of course, standing on her first runs, possibly just waiting for things to improve. As, who's this? This is Jim Zeisler on the MX-5. Jim, time in a 78.3, 78.3. About 7 seconds off of his time. So 7-second disparity between dry times and the current course conditions. Dave Barker in the Corvette. That thing's got to be a handful. And if you're at home, you're probably watching Dave Barker, judging by where Randall's aiming that car. You could see Jim just crossing paths with an 85.9, 85.9. Jim just a tenth out of the trophies behind Dave Baker, so may have to put in that work tomorrow. We'll see how long it takes before we get some improvements. Dave Baker, hold on to that third and final trophy position. He's slower on this run, a 78.6, 78.6. So about 3/10 slower in the wet than Zeisler. Next up is the number 96 car of Ed Fisher. Ed is your current class leader in B Street, 76.1, and that's the fastest wet time in B Street. So 76.1, setting your top wet B Street time. Carts are all over the place here. Lots of squiggles by Tim Ruth as he finds his way to a 70.8. 70.8, that will be an improvement for him over his first run, DNF. Lots of cones out there. Jason Vahij, the culprit for a bunch of those. He's working his way through the final couple offsets and into the finish, splashing his way to a 78.8 plus 2, 78.8 plus 2 for Jason in the number 13 kart mod. So still have a bunch more karts to go. We've got Colin Scheidler coming through in the Honda Renspeed. Time in for Colin, a DNF. DNF for Colin. So no help there for Colin with a DNF. George Nelson in the Burrell, Honda Burrell kart. Coming up next, what can he do? Top rain time so far in kart mod, that's 70.8. More off courses called out there for Carmod. Carmod with a surprising number of DNFs on the first run, almost continuing. As definitely hard to find traction with those karts. Lots of standing water out there, it looks like, as red flag and Kevin Vincent out there for as he was catching up to George Nelson. George with a DNF on his run. DNF on a 99.0 for George Nelson. So Kevin Vincent with a rerun on this run, possibly. Although marked here as DNF, if that DNF was before the flag, may not get that rerun. Clarence Clark, time in, 73.1, 73.1. As some of the previous times that I had are being scored DNFs. Not sure what's up there, but I'm going to wait to see who has a sub 70 rain time here in kart mod, if there is one. Michael Francis coming close, a 71.6, 71.6 for Michael Francis. As it looks like some of the karts opting not to run. Class leader Scott Boito not coming back to the line. We're back over to ASP with Matt Butts in the 2011 370Z. We're working the course now. He needs a 66.2 to get himself up into second place. He's working that Z around. It's not likely with the conditions, but we'll see what the time is in the wet anyways. Time in for Matt Butts, a 92.5, and definitely no help for him. He still sits in third, 1.2 out of that number 2 spot. But sets our wet time. Next up is going to be Francis Miller. Francis kind of working gingerly through the course there. Pretty sure he's not on wet tires. So time in for Francis a 90.8, 90.8, just about, we'll say 1.7 seconds faster than Matt Butts' time. So Matt showing how to get it done in a rear-wheel drive car, interestingly enough. Ryan Lutz out on course currently. He's got a D and F, unfortunately, on this run. Had 2 cones on his previous run, so not the best of days for Ryan out there in ASP with Be Prepared. Now taking to the course. They're scooting pretty good there, so it looks like at least the Christmas car is on wets. And here's Ryan Lutz with a DNF on a 90.7, but DNF. So an off course on this run for Ryan in the number 92 car. All right, Robert Christmas, time in 73.8 for Robert Christmas in his 89 Honda Civic SI. As some of the sheen starting to disappear from the surface, pretty soon we'll just have a couple spots of standing water. Some breaks in the cloud cover as well, so if we can get a little bit more sunshine, should help expedite getting rid of some of the moisture on the ground, bring back some of the speed, but we'll have a green course, as they say, once that's done with. 91.5 for Gordon Maklowitz. Gordon in that top spot after first runs. He's a DNF on this one, 91.5, but DNF. Gonna guess he's still on dry tires in that EPC RX. Looks like that's Dave O'Malley in the A-Mod car going around in the showcase right outside of that big Chicago box. We called it the Alaska box during one of the course walks. Next up in EP is going to be Matt Turro. Matt with a 96.9. Obviously no for that on that run. Matt Turro just 96 style behind Robert Christmas for the number 3 spot in E Prepared. So O'Malley going around in that A-Mod car, looped it, and then went off course. So this run definitely no help for him. We're going to move on to SSRL. Simi Rich in the Porsche, splashing her way through the Chicago box, and she's exiting out into, we'll say, the slalom following the showcase sweeper. Could call it the showcase slalom. Heading on out towards those Capital Cargo planes in the background. Can likely see her in part of the view if you're looking through the finish cam. O'Malley in with a DNF on a 106.5, mostly due to that spin, but if they're not on wet tires, got to be real tough to keep that A-Mod car pointed straight. Just not enough speed or grip to get the downforce working for him, and then just enough power to get the back tires constantly spinning. So Simi Rich out on course right now. Shelly Monfort following her up. It's going to just be a battle of who can get the fast wet time here in SSRL, as they're not likely to touch those dry times from before. Simi gingerly making her way up to the finish. Time in for Simi, an 88.0, 88.0, setting the wet pace in SSRL. We'll see what Shelly can do in that Z06 Corvette. Gotta wonder if they put the Kumo W710s, which I think were specifically legal for this event. And if I get the rumors right, they weren't legal for the last event. So Shelly able to pull down a 70.9, 70.9 in that C6 Z06. So Shelly still in that second spot, but setting the fastest dry time currently. We'll see what the current class leader, Stephanie Reeve, has to say about that as she's coming up to the finish now. A 71.3 for Stephanie Reeve. So positions just about swapped, with Shelly being 0.4 faster in the wet than Stephanie, but Stephanie with that 1.1 second dry time advantage, and that will be what she'll take going in tomorrow unless things drastically change on this course. Cheryl Davis in the number 96 car, unfortunately off course earlier on. Lyric Kramer taking on the course in the Porsche. Not sure if she took the time to swap tires, but she's taking her time through that big Alaska box and out into the long slalom. Getting on it, and let's see if she can get it turned in on the brakes. I have an inkling that she's changed tires to her street tires, as she was able to get that turned in pretty good. Cheryl Davis with a DNF 93.0 for her. 93.0 for Cheryl Davis, but unfortunately a DNF. Just have Donna Marks and Lyric Kramer for SSRL first drivers. And then Chrissy Weaver to follow up. Possibly being the only second driver may give her an advantage if this course does dry up. A 92.1 but DNF for Donna Marks. 92.1 but DNF for Donna in the Weaver Z06. Lyric finishing us off for first drivers in SSRL. Here, second runs about halfway through this heat with a sweep car out there. It's an 81.9 for Lyric, 81.9. So not quite up on the same times as Shelly and Stephanie, who are likely on the race wets, either Hoosier wets or Kumo wets. Lyric, unfortunately, DNF on that run. So Lyric with 2 DNFs. If she doesn't get a timed run in for her third run, that'll put her out for tomorrow. So imperative that she gets a timed run in to have any shot for tomorrow. Going into SSPL, Amanda Minen in the 04 Corvette C5, prepped for SSP. On course now, as on the horizon I can see some daylight. There's still some hope for everyone still yet to drive. All right, so Amanda Minen and Laura Harbor both out on course currently. Amanda in the yellow C5. Laura driving that silver Toyota Celica with Lynn Cox heading out for a threesome of ladies out on course now. Lynn and STSL. Let's see what Amanda has. She's got an 86.4 plus one cone. 86.4 plus one cone. Not a bad time considering the conditions. Next up is going to be Laura Harbor. Laura in that Toyota Celica. Time in for Laura, an 80.9, 80.9 for Laura in the G Stock or G Street Toyota Celica. All right, Lynn Cox in the number 96 STSL Mazda Miata. Time in is a 74.4, 74.4. And due to 2 cones on the previous run, Lynn improving by a half second. So our first improvement so far after the conditions changing, but a bulk of that is due to dropping cones off. So still looking at about a 3-second gap between dry times and wet times. Nick Barbato's out on course now. He's your STR class leader. We'll see what he can do in the rain with Steve McCarthy in the number 171 car coming through. He's 9 seconds lower on an 82.5. 82.5 for Steve McCarthy. So a portion of this class getting hit heavy by the rain. Couple drivers able to get out there early. As we have a spin by John Lee coming in to finish offsets. This one not looking to help John Lee's case. 15 seconds lower on 80.3 plus 2, 80.3 plus 2. Nick Barbato, your SGR class leader, he's just off of that final sweeper. Not sure what's going on there. Stops for a worker, I think. So Barbato buying himself some time, trying to get maybe a drier course out there. He's going real slow, not sure why. If something happened through the finish there, he's got to hurry up and get off course. As his car is coming up right behind him. So once if you stop on course for any reason and then you continue going, please get off course as soon as you can to prevent reruns for cars behind you. All right, so Barbato, a 85.0 for Barbato. We've got Tavis Spencer, 76.8, 76.8 for Tavis, and the 194 STR Mazda. All right, continuing with STR second drivers, Jeff Walker, a 70.6, 70.6. That one about 5.5 seconds off, so the disparity ranging. So far, no one picking up pure raw time quite yet, as there are some puddles still left on course, despite some of the crests kind of drying off. I can see some what looks like dry pavements at the peaks. Getting Kevin Vincent on his rerun. Kevin, a DNF on a 70.0 on a DNF for Kevin Vincent. So Kevin, DNF on this one, should have one more run to go. We've got C prepared. Second drivers coming up. Sean Ittner coming in first in the green Ford Mustang. And no help there on a 96.9, 96.9. Just really wide tires. Serve to act as a boating device more than a tire when you have any amount of standing water. So C prepared. Just getting through the course. With those tires on being a challenge. We've got Ethan Bradbury coming in next. He's sitting third as he squiggles his way through the finish. A bit of a tank slapper as he gets sideways on a 90.6, 90.6 for him. Moving over to B Street's second drivers. Greg Vincent Coming in next, he should be able to improve as he had a pretty big off on the last run. 76.0 is the time in for him. 76.0 is the time for Greg Vincent in that yellow S2000. All right, Jack Burns coming up next in the funniest shaped Mini Cooper that I've seen. And I'm only saying he's got a Mini Cooper because that's what's in my timing screen. The MX-5 of Jack Burns, number 144 in B Street, a 79.2, 79.2. That one about 10 seconds slower than his dry time. Just one more car left to go here in B Street. And that's going to be Mike Eckert. Mike improving by 10 seconds with a 76.7. 76.7 for Mike Eckert in that B Street C5 Corvette. Going to have ASP Aaron Miller, your class leader, coming up next. We'll see what he does in the wet weather. He'll be followed up by Carmen Rollins from E Prepared. The dry spots at the crests of the concrete slabs definitely starting to dry off as Aaron times in with a 77.1. 77.1, but a DNF on this one. DNF for Aaron Miller on a 77.1. So it seems like a rough course in the slippery conditions. I've seen a lot of DNFs out there as cars overshooting some of these braking zones. Enough room out there to get up, get some higher speeds out there, but then just bleeding the speed down, not working in the rain. A 75.7 for Carmen Rollins, who's sitting in second place in E Prepared. So Carmen, 75.7. Carmen sitting about a second behind Gordon. Both of those drivers, of course, standing on their first runs as we're getting back over, I think, Kart Mod's second drivers, as well as SSRL second drivers. This is Chrissy Weaver coming through the finish now in 86.6. 86.6. I'm not sure if they're still on the dry tires or wet tires, but Chrissy with a decent time if she's on dry tires there. Could be a sign that conditions are improving. All right, so workers. All right, next up, Timothy Vincent. Tim with a 64.8 as the sun comes out to say hello. 64.8 for Tim Vincent. That is definitely an improvement over some of the kart times that were running earlier. And that may help Nick Barbado, who got that rerun, stopping for a worker. With second heat just about wrapping up, or we're getting to final runs now. So if you're working third heat, please start checking in now. Please check in for third heat. Nick Barbado, a 69.6 plus 1, 69.6 plus 1 cone. So that, I'm going to say, is slower by about 6 seconds raw time. So 69.6 plus 1 for Nick Barbado on his second run. Hello at home if you're watching through the live stream. We're going to be getting away, and we are off with third heat. We're going to try to keep things rolling here because we need to get a lot of cars through in a limited amount of time. So third heat workers, please start checking in now. Brett Steinhauser taking off to the course on his third and final run for here at day one at the 2014 Wilmington Champ Tour. Hosted, of course, by the Cincinnati Region SCCA. These guys doing a great job to put on a great event. on a great site. Although the site having some logistical concerns with being on an active airfield gives us only a limited amount of time, which means we have to be super efficient to get all of our runs in today. All right, so Stephen Lee tagging a cone on the slalom coming out as Brett Steinhauser makes his way up to the finish. Time in for Brett, a 74.4, 74.4. And that only matches his second time, so he'll stand on that one. 74.4 for Brett. Improvement by a half second, but he's still a half second behind Larry McCarthy for that 15th spot in this very large STR class. Stephen Lee in next. He's sitting in that 8th spot from his first or second run, actually. So Stephen, one of the few drivers to get a dry run on the second run, a 78.8 plus 1, 78.8 plus 1 cone for Stephen Lee, number 24 in STR. Next up, Kurt Bogerman. Kurt with a 77.4, 77.4. He stays in 13th. About 1.5 behind John Lee for 12th in STR. So far, no real big improvements over first run times. Although cars are visibly faster through most of the course now. Larry McCarthy timing in 80.5, 80.5. And of course, that one no help for him. Sits in 15th. Just 4/10 behind Steve McCarthy. Next up, Justin Gates in the number 78 car. He's got a 73.5, 73.5 for Justin Gates. Justin holding on to that 5th and final trophy spot in STR. So if some of you were thinking about it, there will be no walkthrough between the 3rd and 4th heats. No walkthrough, no midday course walks, and no midday break as we are trying to get back on track due to the rain delay. Jared Hicks, next car in. He's got a 74.3, 74.3 for Jared Hicks in that 03 Mazda Miata. Josh McDonough in the number 90 car, 79.7, 79.7 for Josh McDonough. Hearing that a car stopped on course for a cone that was out of place that was not out of place. So that's an interesting call. But no free reruns just because you stopped. You got to make sure that that thing is not there when it's not supposed to be if you're stopping for a down cone. We've got Josh McDonough in, 79.7, 79.7 for him. We've got Tim Byers coming in next in his Mazda Miata. Tim Byers, a DNF on that run, I guess. A DNF for Tim Byers. Stays 11th in SCR. Matthew Braun next in, 69.3, 69.3. And that just a little bit slower than what he had run from the last heat. So despite having driven in conditions getting worse, doing so while conditions are getting better, just not as much speed with some puddling out on course. Josh Owens, number 97 in STR. He's got a 70.5, 70.5. Watch and see prepared out on course now. These guys should be a pretty good indication on how much puddling there is, as they will have absolutely no traction once they start hydroplaning on the teaspoon of water. So Idner in that Ford Mustang. just the finish offsets to go. And Ittner makes his way to a 97.6. And Ittner, actually, that being Ittner's fastest time, that'll be the time he stands on due to DNFs in his first two runs. This one reportedly is on course with a 97.6. I'm getting texted pictures of cookies from somebody who's back home listening in on the event. Not sure who gets to get those when they win. Next up, John Bradbury in C Prepared, a DNF on a 90.1 for your class leader in C Prepared. 90.1 for John Bradbury, sitting in first, about 2 seconds over Sean Ittner in class. So again, third heat workers, if you're working the third heat, please start checking in. Making our way to the halfway point through final runs. Trying to finish these heat up as fast as possible with Chris Miller coming up to the finish next in his Ford Mustang. Time in for Chris. A 100 plus 1. 100 plus 1. And that one would have been faster on raw time, but the cone taking that one away. Unfortunately for Chris, a DNF on his one and only dry run. He's selling for a 101.6 as his fastest time this morning. Moving back to B Street action, Ann Vincent in the S2000. Slows down a little bit there, 79.0 for her. 79.0 for Ann Vincent in the yellow S2000 as this course continues to dry up. A lot more dry patches. I'm not sure if you can see them if you're watching from home. Jim Zeisler next in the MX5. Zeisler, 73.2 for Zeisler in that MX5 sponsored by Dave Cutney Tire. All right, next up, getting into B Street action. This is Dave Baker coming through the finish on 80.3, 80.3. Good 5 seconds faster than his previous run, but still 9 seconds slower than his dry time from his first run. Next up, George Modlin in the number 91 car, 74.8, 74.8. That one only 2 seconds slower than his quick time, but his quick time still carrying a cone. So, unfortunately for George, his first run time, if it was clean, would have been up there in the top three. That negated to a cone, and then the weather not helping him out here as Ed Fisher, your B Street class leader, comes to the finish of 70.8, 70.8. About 2.8 seconds off of his dry time. Tim Ruth in next, and Tim Ruth finally getting an on-course run with 69.5. 69.5 for Tim Ruth after two DNFs. Gets that time in. Jason Vihi, a 65.2. 65.2. He's in the same boat, had two DNFs, and then finally gets his run in. So it doesn't look like anybody's going to be able to touch Scott Boydo, who's sitting on top with a 2-second lead here in kart mod. And his lead pretty much defended with the rain. Colin Scheidler in next in the number 23 kart, 64.0. 64.0. Colin sitting in second, 2 seconds behind Scott. And again, Heat 3 workers, please check in. Again, there will be no course walk or break between Heats 3 and 4. George Nelson next in an 84.3. Followed up very quickly by Kevin Vincent. Kevin with a DNF on this run. A DNF for Kevin Vincent. So no help there for Kevin. Let's see. Clarence Clark in next. He's got a 65.4 for Clarence Clark. And that'll improve Clarence's time by 7.7 seconds. So a big pickup there by Clarence as we're starting to finish off Kart Mod. Michael Francis in next to 65.9. 65.9 for Michael Francis. Looks like it's only 3 seconds off of his first run time as conditions continue to dry out. Matt Butts in the ASP 370Z coming up next. As STR second drivers should be out on course. So let's see. Matt Butts time in an 84.4, 6 seconds faster than his previous run, but still off of his dry time, so things not completely dry out there just yet. I'm guessing these are reruns. What runs are we on? For the cars that are out there. All right, Noel Leslie next up, 70.3 plus 1, 70.3 plus 1 cone for Noel. So Noel's sitting on his first run in the 8th position. Actually, I'm not sure if he's in 8th because my results just got a little skewed. Coming up next, ASP, Francis Miller and Ryan Lutz to finish off ASP, with EP making its way on a course. Francis timing an 82.0 for Francis Miller. Stays in second place in ASP. Ryan Lutz in the MR2, a 79.1 plus 1, 79.1 plus 1 cone. So Ryan Lutz stands on his first run as well here in ASP. Just the class leader, Aaron Miller, left to go, but he's got a 2-second lead. Next up in E prepared, Robert Christmas, a 71.4, 71.4. Robert wishing that he had a clean run on his first run. That would have put him up there, at least with a chance for to challenge for the lead. He'll be followed up by Gordon Makalowitz. Gordon in the CRX, your class leader. How does he compare? DNF on a 74.0, so an off course for Gordon on a 74.0. Moving back into, I think this is going to be SSRL third runs. Oh, and a cone called on one of the SSRL cars. We'll see what happens when they come through the finish. Up in E prepared, Matt Turo, 83.2 for Matt Turo. All right, Simi Rich in next, a 78.2. 78.2 for Simi Rich. Coming through the finish. Shelly, I'm told, is back to dry tires and has a cone on this run. We'll see what happens as she's trying to make her way, finding the dry spots on course. Weaving to the finish sideways and saves it. 77.2 plus 1. 77.2 plus 1 cone. A little bit slower than she was on the wets. So next up, Stephanie Reeve. Not sure if she switched back to a 70.5 for her. 70.5 for Stephanie. So Stephanie holding on to that lead in SSRL. 1.1 seconds over Shelly Monfort. Chrissy Weaver in that third spot. 1.5 back. So I'm told Stephanie still on Reigns. Reigns, I guess, being the tire in even partially wet conditions. Cheryl Davis in next, a DNF. So 2 DNFs to finish off Cheryl's day as she stands on her first run. Just watching a couple more cars for SSRL. It's going to be Donna Marks and Lyric Kramer. Donna coming to the finish now. Saves a little bit of a slide with a 79.2. 79.2 for Donna Marks. Donna 7/10 behind Simi for that fourth spot. 2 seconds out of the trophies. So Chrissy Weaver in that third trophy position now. Can Lyric challenge for it? She needs to get a timed run in as she's standing on 2 DNFs right now. Gingerly making the way through course in that Porsche 911. Time in for Lyric in 87.3. 87.3. So that one likely to put Lyric out of it as she waves off the ticket through the finish. So just Chrissy Weaver left to go. And unless things change drastically, it looks like Chrissy Weaver's going to stay in third. She needs to make up 1.5 seconds in these drying conditions to catch up to Shelly for the number 2 spot. Anything can happen. We're halfway through this third run through third runs for this second run group. If you're working third heat, please start checking in for work. We've been calling for workers, so workers for third heat, please start checking in. We are going to need you very quickly. Sweep car is already on its way back in. Amanda Minen out on course in the C5 SSPL car. She's followed by Laura Harbour and Lynn Cox. Laura, of course, in that Toyota Celica. All right, watching Amanda Minen coming through the finish now in the Chevy Corvette. Time in for Amanda is an 80.6, 80.6. That's 6 seconds quicker than her second run in the rain. So it gives you a little bit of an idea of the conditions out there on course now, but still not quite as fast as the first run group had and first runs of this heat. Amanda Minen, your only car in SPL, and thus your class leader so far. Laura Harbour in the same boat as GSL's class leader, a 72.4 for her, 72.4, and that's within 1.5 seconds of her fastest time. So maybe a sign that things are starting to pick up. Lynn Cox coming up next. Lynn in that Mazda Miata. Unfortunately, DNF on her third and final run. DNF for Lynn Cox on a 74.2. So that 74.2, actually just about the same as her second run, but still about 4 seconds off of her first run. Steve McCarthy in the Mazda Miata for STR, running STR's second drivers now. We've got three of them out on course: Steve McCarthy, John Lee, and Nick Barbado. I can hear Nick pedaling that S2000 out through the course as Steve McCarthy comes to the finish, a 77.7. 77.7 for Steve McCarthy. It's about 4 seconds off of his best time. Again, Heat 3 workers. You should have already checked in. Heat 3 workers. John Lee next to finish. He's a second off of his best time. 70.3, 70.3, stays in 14th in STR. Nick Barbado swinging it out there on that final sweeper, kicking through the offsets and keeping the car nice and tidy. A 66.4 plus 1, 66.4 plus 1 cone for Nick Barbado. 3 seconds off of his best time. So Nick pretty much one and done. And then he says he's outie. Your class leader by 1.5 seconds. $70.1 for Tavis Spencer in STR. 70.1 for Tavis. And that will be his best time by 6 seconds almost 7 seconds. So Tavis definitely able to improve on his final run. Jeff Walker, number 198 in STR, 67.1. 67.1 for Jeff Walker. And now we're going to move into C-prepared second drivers. I'm going to call out some names. Brandon Davis, Brian Connors, Nick Myers. Brian Connors is checked in. Brandon Davis, Nick Myers, Dave Montgomery, Neva Hoover, Robert Carpenter, Clay McCool, Tara Johns, Mark LeBance, and those are my workers that have not yet checked in. Sean Ittner in with a 79.2. 79.2 for Sean Ittner. NC prepared. And next is Ethan Bradbury, a 78.2. So they hold station second and third in CP. John Bradbury, your unofficial class leader from day one here at the Wilmington Champ Tour, has a 1.9 second advantage going into day two tomorrow. B Street second drivers, and Greg Vincent picks up 6 seconds in these driving conditions into the third spot, knocking Dave Baker out of the trophies provisionally for day one here in B Street. He is 1.6 off of Jack Burns, who's coming up next. Let's see if Jack can improve on his time too. A 71.6. That's just 2 seconds off of his first run time. So Burns 1.2 seconds behind Ed Fisher, who's your class leader in B Street. Greg Vincent rounding out the trophies in third, 1.6 back. Mike Eckert also in B Street, a 78.1 plus 3. Sorry, that's a 72.1 plus 3. 72.1 plus 3. If that run was clean, it would have been a 6 second improvement. But 3 cones on that run, pretty much throwing away the day for Mike Eckert. Kart Mod, second drivers, and we are on second drivers, trying to get ready to finish up this heat. Third heat workers, please start checking in now. Or please continue to check in and finish. I had 10 names just a second ago. You'll be late in just a moment as we're getting ready to wrap up this heat. Tim Vincent from Kart Mod, a 62.2, 62.2 for Timothy Vincent. Not sure where that puts him in class. Some of my results are a little screwy. Your ASP class leader, Aaron Miller, 69.9. 69.9 for Aaron Miller. So Aaron going into tomorrow with a 2-second advantage over co-driver Francis Miller. Matt Butts just out of the trophies by 1.2 seconds. All right, we are on our last car. It is out on course now, so that means that if you have not checked in for third shift, you are late. Carmen Rollins, need prepared, sitting in second, 74.0. 74.0 for Carmen. Carmen sitting 1 second back behind Gordon Maklowitz in EP. Those two rounding out the top two and only trophy positions in class. Robert Christmas, unfortunately, coning away a run that would have put him in that second spot within about 7/10 of Gordon. But again, the cone and then the rain putting a rain on Robert's day. Peter Smith from A Modified working the final couple offsets. All right, Mark LeBance, I know who you are. Tara Johns, Robert Carpenter, Dave Montgomery. Check in now. Peter Smith, 88.7. 88.7 for Peter Smith. And just Chrissy Weaver left to go. Peter Smith in the lead in his class in A Modified, has lots of DNFs there. Chrissy Weaver, time in 72.8, 72.8, and she stays in third place, 1.5 behind Shelly Monfort for second.